Hello and welcome to Media Musings. Hello to whoever happens to be lurking in the chat, and of course, anyone who is watching in the future.
Are we doing both of the last two pirates this week?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Right.
But so before we go on, interesting little footnote.
Go on.
So it was brief. I'm not sure if it was touched on during the stream or right after it, but so William Turner, it was there was an actual William Turner who was a painter famous for painting ships.
Painting shipwrecks, more specifically.
Yeah, painting shipwrecks.
And storms. Storms
yes.
at sea. Beautiful work if you find it. You can literally Google it, and there's some great work. And this was something that was discussed after the stream when Ring brought it up. Brought up something else entirely. And I finally made the connection. But Ring has actually seen William Turner's art in person and didn't remember until I reminded them.
Well, here's the thing, though. There was also a real life Eliza Swan, which was a whaling vessel.
Yeah.
That got captured by the Americans and ransomed back to England as a pirate ship.
Yeah. Look, sometimes Disney gets certain nerdy bits right, okay?
Yeah.
You've got to give credit where due.
Yeah.
But yeah, Turner's very famous for almost abstract ocean paintings. The sunset paintings by Turner are also quite famous. And I think I would be hard pressed to name off the top of my head a piece of Turner's art that didn't have. It is very much of its time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of racial things going on there. And there's a lot of pushback. But yeah. Very, very. If you read Turner's thesis, you can understand why a lot of American supposedly academic reading of its own history is written and spoken the way it is. Let me put it that way because I don't want to use the big P word.
But basically, we're bringing this up because Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and At World Ends, and At World's End are a Western.
It very much in that. I want to clarify that statement. They are in the style of Westerns with the theme of Westerns.
Yeah.
Such that in combination, those two elements make it arguably part of the canon of Western movies.
Yeah.
That's me being pedantic and academic. For our purposes, it's a Western.
And for our purposes, I feel safe in saying that they're the same. That they're the same film in that they are two halves of one film.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely, yes, they are. They are an immediate... the narrative is designed to pick up exactly where one left off.
Yeah.
Give or take. And for me, I watched them back to back last night.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like watching one long 5-hour film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apparently, we have buffering.
Yeah, or at least we did about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that. Hopefully, it's we seem to be getting fairly clear connection. Nothing showing us buffering at our end. So do let us know.
Maybe an issue with StreamYard's talking to YouTube on my end.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of buffering on YouTube itself. I'm just looking at it now.
Okay, so it's YouTube's problem.
Yeah, if you're not here, folks, or if you can't be dealing with it, which I don't blame you, catch us on the rewatch. Because I'm currently looking at myself trying to clarify Turner, and it keeps stopping. So it's definitely not.
Yeah,
us. It's YouTube.
Okay.
So hopefully that will pick it up anyway. So if we don't get a lot of interaction in the chat, we know why, and we don't blame you in the slightest. Right. These movies then.
Yep. So
it's sticking with the established set piece of the eerie, horrifying cold open.
Yeah.
In Pirates 2.
Yeah.
Dark. Yeah. Immediately sets this film up as this is not one for the kiddies.
Yeah. Well, so, and once again, keeping in with the pattern, it opens with Elizabeth Swann and William Turner.
Yeah.
And then goes to Jack later. And we learned that, for lack of a better word, or in keeping with the, the metaphor and such, the railroad has come to town.
Yeah. Which is interesting. Again, this film does smack you in the face with the Western references.
Yeah. Given the fact that the main mortal antagonist for the for this film, because for our purposes, 2 and 3 are just two halves of one long film.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think for everyone's purposes.
Yeah. The East India Trading Company is the mortal antagonist as opposed to the, cursed antagonist.
The corporate antagonist, I would say, as opposed to the living antagonist of Davy Jones.
Yeah.
Although who the villain is and who the antagonist is changes a lot throughout these films.
Yeah.
Again, not your usual, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy Disney fare.
Yeah.
So, there's that to consider.
Though, though I am going to give a little historical nitpick. Mostly because it's a bit of history that just amuses me.
Go on.
The East India Trading Company wouldn't be operating in the Caribbean. What would be operating in the Caribbean would have been the South Seas Trading Company, which was really like a shell company scam that ultimately destroyed England's economy.
The South Seas Company at one point had so many investors it was worth more than the GDP of England. And all of its investors were English. It collapsed.
Yeah.
When we all remember 2008 and the banks that were too big to collapse.
Yeah.
The South Seas Company, in modern terms, it would be... Imagine if the US government took all the bonds for the US currency and economy, the US government bonds, and threw them into the shares of Apple, and then Apple collapsed. Yeah. That's what we're talking about here. That's the level we're talking about with the South Seas Company.
And, of course, the South Seas Trading Company didn't do any trading, ultimately.
Ultimately, no, they didn't. They were probably the first example of a large-scale futures market.
Yeah.
Whereby the product actually doesn't physically exist.
Yeah. So basically, if all those bonds in Apple also were, and also didn't, and Apple didn't actually make anything.
Yeah, so it's like, I'll give you another historical example of what it is. It would be like if Germany in the 1940s dropped its entire economy into investing in a factory run by Mr. Schindler.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent we're looking at here. You know, it's just nothing gets produced. It trades on its name and not much else. Although he was doing other stuff in the background, that absolutely, but that's the equivalent.
But, once again, it's a fantasy Western swashbuckler movie. I only brought it up because that story just amuses the fuck out of me.
Yeah. It's real. It's one of those weird history moments where you're just like, we should have learned from that, but we didn't.
Yeah.
There's a great video on it. OSP have done a great video on it. Blue did a great video, if you find it.
And Extra History did a great series on it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Extra credits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just an interesting little aside. Obviously, the reason the South Sea Trading Company never did any trading is because they didn't have a monopoly, and they were claiming that they were going to sail in Spanish waters without the right to sail in Spanish waters.
Yeah.
So they were basically pirates who never did any pirating.
Much like our heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got this eerie, dark, cold opening, and with the kid as well, it's...
Well, if we're treating this as one movie...
Yeah.
That's at the halfway point.
That's at the halfway point. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is because this whole thing kind of leads up to that moment. But that moment almost drags back to the start of the first part of double, if you like, and gives it that... It casts a shadow backwards in time over the previous film. That's why I keep mentioning it here. But yeah, the second film. And for those keeping track of my boo-boos, I was wrong last week. The scene I really, really want to talk about is in the third movie. Yeah. Only just, but it's in the third movie.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it also, if you listen to the words of the song, it basically gives you the plot and tells you that this is a Western.
Yeah. It really does.
Yeah. About how the Brethren Court of Pirates tame the frontier by binding Calypso.
Yeah.
And of course now Lord Beckett and his railroad have come in to exploit the the ground that was broken for them.
Yeah. And as we say, a dangerous song to be singing for those who are ignorant of its meaning.
Yeah.
And it does kind of cover the first film as well, with the first verse of that.
Yeah.
I think what amuses me as well is these films have sort of pirate songs that come through them. In the first one, it was, Your Ho, My Heart Is Your Ho.
Yeah.
And then this one is very much the dark sequel to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is
and in Dead Man, in the first part, because we're treating this as one movie.
Yeah.
Gibbs in the open, Gibbs is singing 15 Men on a Dead Man's Chest.
Yeah. And there's a lot of little really clever moments. You can tell these two films were written at the same time.
Yeah. And they were also, in fact, filmed at the same time.
Yeah. There's small things like we see in the first film before there's any reference to it. We get, is it in the first film, we get Calypso's little thing on the table. And it's only there for like a split second in shot. Then it becomes such a big part of the plot later.
Oh yeah, the little music, like crab shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the music pendant, the heart shaped.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's that's why it's really difficult to discuss these films separately or chronologically.
Yeah.
And I find myself thinking about these films thematically as well.
Yeah.
The whole, I think there's a great argument for the East India Trading Company feels very much like an argument for American independence as well.
Yeah.
It's, these people are, it's repeatedly said, these people are representatives of the king. Cutler Beckett is a representative of the king.
Yeah.
And yet he's doing things that the only man who is staunchly loyal to the king, the governor, cannot abide by.
Yep.
And there's a lot of... It's very interesting the way it shows the corruption in government in these two films, because we see the governor is he's corrupt on behalf of the heroes, and we can almost understand why.
Yeah.
We can see, this is his daughter. She loves this man. He doesn't want to see this man go to prison. He doesn't want his daughter to suffer like that.
He bends the rules for what he sees as good reasons.
Yeah, but his good reasons are his daughter. Very much in the same way as I said last week, Will's good reason was Elizabeth.
Yeah.
They've both got the same priorities, and I think that's the only reason you can argue that this relationship is even realistic. Because the governor's daughter, otherwise, I'm not being funny, she's nowhere to let in a blacksmith near her.
Yeah.
Or
no matter how fine a sword he makes.
Yeah, and that sword is really important throughout these films. Did you notice?
Yeah. Yep.
Did you notice the narrative of the sword, I'm going to call it?
Yeah.
So, it's made at the beginning, and we know Will made it. When he was... It's probably the last sword he made as an honest man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he made it for the Commodore.
Yep.
It then stays with the Commodore until the Commodore loses his commission.
Yep.
Yep. Then, through shenanigans, it ends up in the hands of Davy Jones.
Well, no, it goes to Beckett.
It goes to Beckett and then back to
Norrington.
Yeah. Then, through shenanigans, ends up in the hands of Davy Jones.
In the hands.
In the hands of Davy Jones.
Yeah.
Who uses it to kill Will.
Yeah.
And at which point Will then becomes immortal. And there's kind of it's a leap. I'm doing yoga. I understand this. This is mental gymnastics. But there is an argument there for that narrative being a commentary on immortality and legend and myth. And there's an old concept. I think it goes back to the Romans. It might go back to the Greeks. Don't quote me. It's just popping into my head right now, so I haven't researched it. That you die twice. You die once when you die, and you die a second time when someone speaks your name for the last time. Fairly certain it's Roman. And Will continues to live through the reputation of his skills as a swordsman at the moment he becomes physically immortal and becomes a myth and a legend.
Yeah.
So those two things become combined. And it take a bit to tease it out. And like I said, it's only just popped into my head, so I'm doing this off the cuff. So I can't do it live. But there's definitely threads to pull there.
And I won't say that you're quite the mental Simone Biles that you think you might be.
I wish I could do mental gymnastics as well as she does. And you know what? I just want to say, as well as an aside, all support to her. It's a hugely brave thing she did, stepping out of the Olympics. Hi, Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And just all support and love to her, and I wish her all the best, because she's an incredible athlete and she deserves all the good in the world. She really does.
Because seeking, gaining, and ultimately the price of immortality is a big running theme in the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy.
Yeah.
I think I said something on. So by the way, apologies for being late. I thought this was off for some reason. So so I apologise for being late.
Yeah.
I mean, I said sort of something about this last week. That a big running theme is, I mean, you've expanded on it a bit more with the immortality, but like the cost of obtaining your desire, whether it be like the treasure, the Aztec treasure in the first one, or so on. There was a price they had to pay for that.
Because Davy Jones says it outright, doesn't he, about Calypso? He says she'll give a man his wildest dreams and watch as it turns to ash.
Yeah.
And that's a very Christian moral meaning to have. This idea of selfish want and selfish ambition leads to a fall, pride before a fall. It's the same reason that ambition in Channel Punching Bag, there's a reason ambition is strongly characterized throughout modern literature and media as a potentially negative trait, far more negative than positive. Ambition is fine in small doses. Ambition is what got us out of the caves and into the cities.
Yeah.
Ish.
But I think we're echoing.
Yeah, I think Scum's got a bit of an echo. Are your headphones working?
Yeah.
Shut up. Should be my. Right, you still getting it?
Hold on. Let's see.
We don't seem to be.
Nope. Not anymore.
Okay.
We fixed it.
Cool.
Okay.
Fixed.
But, because in the first movie, the cursed gold, does make you quasi-immortal by making you something that is dead.
Yes, but they were only seeking riches in the first movie. They weren't seeking immortality.
And then in what we're calling the second, because 2 and 3 are one movie. Davy Jones has immortality as captain of the Flying Dutchman, but it comes with a task that needs to be completed lest he fall to a curse, which he did.
Yeah, he's very a little bit of a Spider-Man thing going on there.
Yeah,
I defer to my esteemed nerdy comic book colleague on that, but definitely a bit of a Spider-Man vibe of, you've been given this great gift, but you have a responsibility.
Yeah.
And it is very much the thing is, it's a responsibility that any good person would be happy to fulfill anyway. It's not a great. I mean, where are you going? If you've got him like the rest of time immemorial to say it, where are you going to go? You're going to run out of ocean eventually, so you may as well have a job to do.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly a great hardship that's being asked. The hardship is not going on to land. But for someone who truly loves the sea, someone like Davy Jones is presented as, someone like Jack, that's not a hardship.
Yeah.
What the hardship is the fact that Davy Jones didn't love the sea. Davy Jones loved Calypso. And that's the problem. She was a woman as wild and untamable as the sea.
And, and she wasn't there when he went back.
Whereas, so there's this thing of the ever-changing nature of the world and the ocean all bound up in that. But the whole point is, if you have someone who truly loves the sea, ferrying the dead backwards and forwards is not a hardship.
Yeah.
It's something that I would think it's, it almost follows a logical conclusion that, of course, that's what they'd do, because what else would there be to do?
Yeah.
And it's not like shipwrecks are still uncommon.
Yeah.
Well, luckily they're far less common than they were, but it still goes on. It still happens, unfortunately.
I mean, I do like the fact that they've actually sort of taken some sort of old myths of the sea, like, I mean, which I know that this is all a bit of a mishmash, but things like the Flying Dutchman and Davy Jones' Locker and so on as a sort of plot point for these movies.
Yeah,
they have, and also on the comment of myth, while we're talking about myth, Scummer, are you familiar with Fiddler's Green?
Heard it. I've heard of it, but you're gonna have to refresh my memory.
So Fiddler's Green is mentioned in this song, Hoist the Colours.
Yep.
And the line goes, some men have died and some are alive and others sail on the sea. With the keys to the cage and the devil to pay, we lay to Fiddler's Green. Now, Fiddler's Green is a poem. And I think it's actually slightly anachronistic for Pirates of the Caribbean, but for a more in-depth discussion of why this film is not historically accurate and shouldn't be taken as such, see last week where I went on about it for 20 minutes. Fiddler's Green is a poem, and it's very similar to... It's almost a modern conception of... and the words go straight out of my head and it shouldn't, but the ancient Roman and Greek place where dead soldiers and heroes would go.
Oh, Elysium.
Elysium.
Yeah.
It's a poem about this is where the soldiers go when they die.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's American originally. I think it's from the American Civil War. Again, don't quote me, but I know it's there. And It's from Navy folklore.
Which one's this? Sorry, which is this?
It's the Fiddler's Green poem.
Oh, the Fiddler's Green. Okay.
Yeah.
That may be where I've heard of it. So
yeah. So it goes halfway down the trail to hell in a shady meadow green are the souls of all the dead troopers camped near a good old time canteen, and this eternal resting place is known as Fiddler's Green. Marching past straight through to hell, the infantry are seen, accompanied by the engineers, artillery, and marines, for none but the shades of cavalrymen dismount at Fiddler's Green. Though some go curving down the trail to seek a warmer scene. No trooper ever gets to hell, he's emptied his canteen, and so rides back to drink again with friends at Fiddler's Green. And so when a man and horse go down beneath a sabre keen, or in a roaring charge of fierce melee you stop a bullet clean, and the hostiles come to get your scalp, just empty your canteen, and put your pistol to your head and go to Fiddler's Green. So it's not that's the cavalryman's version. There is a navy version as well. There's also there's a couple of different versions.
Yeah.
But they all basically tell the same story of the soldier's last stand, basically. Yeah. Of literally the soldiers who either go down in battle or are in such a losing position. It's kind of a bit of a Teutoburg moment, and they've got a choice of be taken by the enemy or put a bullet in your own head.
I think I've actually found, because I've just Googled this. It's a little bit like meh on the origins on it. They did say that Fiddler's Green appears in Frederick Marat's novel, The Dog Fiends. Yeah. Which is 1856. So, I mean, that might be the earliest reference to it. So, the sort of But I think I realised where I've heard it from. There's a reference to it in Neil Gaiman's Sandman comic books, which is located inside the Dreaming. That might be where I've heard of it.
But
yeah. So Fiddler's Green is basically the afterlife for sailors, is what they're getting at. Because you've got to the fish. There's a plaque. To the fishermen in the North Sea. A memorial at North Shields Fish Quay. And there's a plaque there that reads, "To the fishermen lost in the cold North Sea, and the ones who will be so, I'll be seeing you all on Fiddler's Green, be steady as you go. For Fiddler's Green is a place I've heard tell, though no one really knows, where fishermen go if they don't go to hell and no Arctic wind will blow." So again, various versions of it, but all of them very much in the same theme of dying in service, dying fighting a war, dying on the sea, and not going to hell, but having your own.
Once again, that song is basically telling you the plot of the movie.
Yeah.
Because they are looking to sail into the locker to get Captain Jack.
Yeah, and it's kind of the pride of not being good enough for heaven.
Yeah,
which is a very military thing. I've heard like stories of American Marines being like that, and we all know what they're like. But it's almost like they're saying, isn't that like the folk story of the Marine who died and goes and meets St. Peter and is told basically, you served your time in hell, basically.
Yeah.
It is the story, and it's all kind of that of they're not going to heaven because they're not innocent. They're fighters, they're military, they're soldiers, they're sailors, but they're not. They've already served their time in hell, so this place is set aside for them.
There is also a bit where like U.S. Marines are like, yeah, we're the ones who guard the gates.
Yeah.
Where,
so it's that kind of
where
attitude.
they die, they go to see St. Peter and get put on guard duty.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so it's all that kind of attitude, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that definitely feeds. You can definitely trace that back to ideas of Elysium, because Elysium originally was the resting place of heroes. Yeah. As time went on, and by sort of the first century before Common Era, so BC, for those who still speak in old money, it was more of a if you were a good person and an honourable person, you went to Elysium. And that was that. You know, it had begun to broaden from being just resting place of heroes to being the resting place of good people.
It's sort of, we're just starting to get, you start to get to an era where it's, I suppose, almost the kind of Christian connotation of heaven and so on. I suppose it's and
the fields of asphodel. Yeah, so by the end of sort of the religious, I say the end of, but you know what I mean, the fall from grace, as it were, of the religious practices that would have believed in this kind of setup. You're at the point where Elysium is like the quote end quote, and I say this very loosely, and please don't take this as gospel, pagan heaven. Oh, I'm cringing just saying that, but you know what I mean. And the fields of asphodel become almost a purgatory style place, and then the rest of Tartarus becomes the answer to hell. Then it becomes that same thing that we see throughout Christian doctrine and into the modern day.
Yeah,
I think pagan heaven will do, for a sort of lack of a better term for lay people. I think
for lack of a better term, but I'm cringing as a polytheist saying that.
Yeah,
and I can imagine Scummer is gritting his teeth and wanting to clarify that statement a bit more as well.
No, not at all.
Though it is interesting.
You're too kind to me, Scummer.
That even after. Even during the, millennium of Christian dominance in Europe, which is, where the Western world, for lack of a better term, gets what shared culture it has.
Yeah.
Even then, people are picking up extra little afterlives here and there, because we have Fiddler's Green, we have Davy Jones' Locker.
Yeah, and the thing is, the sailors still to this day are known as one of the most superstitious groups of people on the planet.
Yeah,
they are. Yeah, there are still certain rules when you go on boats and things that you pick up on. You've always got to have a musician on the boat. Captain goes down with the ship.
Yeah.
Boats usually have a cat if they're actually fully seafaring and not just in the shallows as a pleasure craft. And things like that. And it's a lot of it is superstition.
And I'll say, the Davy Jones Locker superstition, again, the origins of this is very unclear. There seems to be a whole variety of different stories of where this come from. There's one theory that they thought it was the ghost of Jonah, and there's another one. There's another nautical superstition that's that said there's a pub owner who kidnapped sailors to press them. And it's also there apparently there was a real pirate by the name of David Jones, but we don't know if that's actually where it really come from. But the earliest known real written reference to Davy Jones, is, at least in a sort of negative connotation, is actually 4 Years of Captain George Roberts by Daniel Defoe, which is the first real very clear reference of Davy Jones' Locker.
Yeah, I would go so far to say that if you were looking post 1400s, and I say that date very specifically, you'll see why in a moment. If you post 1400s, I would say that the tradition of syncretism for myths, legends, and religion was picked up by seafarers, by the ocean-going people after the fall of Rome. If you take the fall of Rome to be the fall of the Eastern Empire.
Yeah.
That tradition of syncretism took to the waters, basically.
Yeah.
And I would go so far to say, I think, as a Reconstructionist, but also those who are more, what's the other type of polytheist? My brain's gone again. We've got Recons and we've got what's the word I'm looking for? Where they apply more to modernity. Starts with an R. Click, click, click. Recons and.
Why am I having a brain fart on this?
Yeah, my brain. Eclectics.
No, not eclectic.
No,
well,
not
yeah,
eclectic.
eclectics are a kind of this, but.
Yeah.
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 We're all googling now because
yeah, we are.
I'll tell you what. This is where
So you,
Sam, we need you.
Someone, please, my brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The wheels are turning, but the mouse is dead.
Yeah. Sort of.
I'll tell you what. Just put it out of our minds because it will come back to us.
Yeah, it'll come back.
The moment we get off of stream, we'll be like.
Yeah, no, but so especially more syncretic modern polytheists, and I say polytheists because I don't want to get into a political debate about terms. Definitely, and Reconstructionists as well to a degree. We definitely owe a lot to the tradition of sailors and the mixing of ideas, myths, legends, religions on the open waters, and sailors carrying those myths and legends around the world.
Yeah.
And it forming into its own thing. I don't want to insult anyone or anything, but to me, the way the myths and legends of the oceans developed and came together is very similar to how I would look at something like modern Wicca or other forms of polytheism in that vein of they take from different areas and combine them to create their own sort of personal thing and then form groups around it. But this is more, it's a, it was specific to the sailors.
It is interesting how Pirates of the Caribbean approaches superstition on ships. Because on one hand, you have Gibbs.
Yeah, who's a bit of a comedic character for it.
But is also the one giving most of the lore dumps.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you have the superstitious crew that Elizabeth Swann dupes into taking her to Tortuga.
Yeah, it's quite difficult though to make a joke out of superstition in a story like this.
Yeah.
Because all the superstitions are true.
Yeah.
And it's almost, it becomes the person who's rolling their eyes at the superstitious characters becomes the butt of the joke in the end.
Yeah.
You better start believing in ghost stories, girly.
You're in one. Yeah.
And it does play with that really well. And plays a lot of the superstitions straight and then but still laughs at them as well. And it's very interesting. It is almost that people who have engaged with modern life on the land are the ones who roll their eyes at it and then learn a lesson.
Yeah.
It's they've forgotten the old superstitions and everything else because they've been on the land, and because Calypso's been bound so long, she's fallen out of living memory.
Yeah.
To people who don't know.
Like now that the frontier has been tamed, people are forgetting the lore.
Yeah. There were so many stories about ghosts, hauntings, things like that in the frontier west of America.
Yeah.
And in any untamed land, or any unconquered land, that happens, for as long as we've had maps, we've had areas on maps where someone scribbled "Here be dragons."
Yeah.
And it is that. It's that once you go there and you've seen it,
Just Sam. Sam.
Yeah.
Just the person we
Speak of the devil.
A wild Sam appeared.
Speak of the devil.
Yeah.
Which is another superstition. There you go.
Yep.
But I mean,
again,
this is obviously this is very much a thing with, I suppose, when you like. I mean, we are talking, I suppose, as well, the age of discovery. That we discovered the new world. Even the
big air quotes.
Bigger. Yeah. Although I think that could be a whole nother. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah.
But
listen, if we want to talk about the mythology of America, we're going to need about 4 hours. One after.
Yeah. The point I'm making is a lot of people, a lot of sailors, whatever. These were people going into the unknown a lot of the times and wondering what lies beyond. And I like to think it might be a bit different when we finally start really getting into exploring space. But you're going to kind of wonder,
we already do. We already do. We already have these stories, sci-fi stories of aliens and other races on the planets. That's basically us looking at the stars and going, "Hey, be dragons." That's what we're doing. It's the same premise.
Well, I am. Unfortunately, I'll probably be dead before it happens, but I am eagerly awaiting the age of space shanties.
Well,
I will start writing those.
I will say one thing, just off topic for a moment. I was fully behind the idea in that meme the other week that we should have actually, the whole human race should have done this as a prank. That when Bezos came back from space, everyone on the planet should have dressed up as Planet of the Apes characters.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Excellent. That would have been But it is very much in the same way they used to write, hey be dragons, hey be the Kraken, hey be whatever monsters, demons, ghosts, and ghoulies. That's what we're doing when we write episodes of Star Trek with scary monsters.
That's a good one. And by the way, that was a very good way to bring it back to Pirates of the Caribbean. There, you mentioned the Kraken.
Well, so here's the thing. Before we get to the Kraken or Kraken or Kraken or however you want to pronounce it.
Are you Scandinavian?
Unfortunately,
Just listen, just be same rule for Kraken as with everything else with me. Just be consistent.
Yeah.
Either Latinize it, Hellenize it, Anglicize it, and pick one.
I'm going with Kraken. I'm just going with Kraken. That's it.
But on Pirates of the Caribbean's commentary on the development of superstition and myth and legend. The 9 pieces of 8 sounds a lot more piratey than the 9 pieces of whatever we happen to have on us at the time.
That's a great commentary on how myths and legends get started.
Yeah.
It's very... Robin Hood sounds much better than Lord Robert of Locksley, who disappeared off into the woods with his manservant.
Yeah.
It's got that vibe to it, hasn't it?
Yeah. I'm saying nothing because...
yeah.
I could go on a bit of a rant about how the ruling class stole the Robin Hood myth. So...
Yeah.
We'll say.
Let's not.
Well, can we save this for a future media musings, perhaps?
I tell you what, I am going to write down right now so I can nagging about it in future. We need a media musings on mythology, possibly a series of them.
Yeah,
we could do like a mythology month or something.
Yeah, mythology month.
Ooh, mythology month does sound fun.
Yeah. Mythology month. Also.
Oh right, Sam.
American.
Yes. When Noodle's finished jotting that down, get Noodle to ask. There was something we were like trying to remember regarding polytheism. I've got a bit of an echo coming somewhere. Sorry.
There are 2 kinds of polytheists, Sam: reconstructionists and
Revivalists.
Revivalists. That's the one.
we had a massive brain fart. We began with R.
Yeah.
And I just sort of was like, Sam, where are you when we need you?
Yeah, I will say that then to complete that thought, meandering thought to nowhere that I had, Reconstructionists and Revivalists owe a lot of our traditions of revivalism and Reconstructionism to the sailors and to the tradition of taking the myths and legends on the ocean. That makes far more sense than that rambling trip to Nowheresville from earlier. Listen to that.
Yeah.
And that's what was the speak of the devil when you showed up, Sam.
Yeah.
Because I actually said out loud, Sam, where are you when we need you?
Yeah.
And then you popped up in the chat.
But, okay. So, the Kraken.
The Kraken. A monster that for me, the Kraken is more representative of free oceans or the free seas.
Yeah.
The wild oceans, as it were, than Calypso in this film.
Yeah.
Because the death of the Kraken represents, you know, the only way you get away from the Kraken is by working as a team. And what's the line? By the sweat of our brows and the strength of our backs.
Yeah, and also, you know, keeping to the shallows.
And keeping to the shallows. Which is what you would do if the seas weren't free and you couldn't move freely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because now I don't know how far you got into the second. I mean,
we're talking thematically. Just
I think to be better because there's too much to cover if we just go through the films. But of course, I mean this is a big thing with Jack at the beginning of I'll just say the second film is partially, probably partially fear of the Kraken, but also fear of Davy Jones himself. Jack's heading for land.
Yeah, which is frightening in and of itself. That alone should be like a flare going up. Jack Sparrow wants to make land.
Yeah.
And he didn't care where. Just make, and which is of course, then we know what happens.
Yeah.
I don't get into all the sort of should we say the tropes of the cannibalistic native tribe kind of thing, but that was.
Yeah, I can see why it's done and it's played for laughs, but there is an important message there of you can't run from your destiny. Trying to run from, and that goes all the way back to Greek myth. Don't argue with the oracle. If the oracle says it, it will happen. Don't try and change it.
Well,
I was just saying.
That being said, I will have to say, I didn't realize until I just rewatched it how fucking much that was telegraphed.
I feel like don't fuck with the Oracle is rule one of being a pirate film.
But
I feel like it's rule one of any mythical or fantasy series.
I guess
with the Oracle.
because
for context, because Sam, you said you haven't seen this.
I've seen it, but not since I was like 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I guess for context, Sparrow had made a deal with Davy Jones to be captain of the Black Pearl for, what was it, 13 years or something like that, if I remember. And then he would have to serve as part of Davy Jones' crew.
For 100, yeah.
For 100, and I love the fact that I love the little thing Jack Jones finally gets hold of him. And I love the little thing that Jack tries to get out of this, and then Davy Jones just shuts him down brilliantly. He says, well, technically, I've only been captain of the Pearl for 2 years because he was mutinied against, wasn't he? And then Davy Jones says, yeah, but you've been calling yourself Captain Jack Sparrow for all this time, which is true. He would always on Captain Jack, which is a recurring thing in these movies, isn't it? Captain Jack Sparrow,
Yeah.
And I love that.
Anyways.
Yeah.
I will say with regards to Jack and Davy Jones, I just put something in the comment.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen to my Robert Johnson album later.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But
it's very deal with the devil.
Crossroad Blues.
No, because the the cannibals were like telegraphed while Will was asking around on Tortuga.
Yeah. Also, yeah, the guy who likes to trade spice for long pig.
Yeah.
Then when he arrived, the parrot, "Don't eat me, don't eat me." The parrot speaks for the guy who owns it.
Yeah.
The guy's saying, "Don't eat me, don't eat me." It's all there.
Yeah.
It is really, really cleverly telegraphed. It's also that entire thing doesn't really age well.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't age well, but it's still funny as fuck because I'm sorry, but Jack Sparrow, the shish kebab.
Yeah.
It's still funny. I'm sorry. I know the entire setup is racist as fuck, but Jack Sparrow, the shish kebab. That was an image.
It also does go to show a little bit how the East India Company is encroaching into the Caribbean.
Yeah. How it's really getting in there with the native tribes of the area to the point where these natives don't even speak English and they're trading spices.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting, the dichotomy in that tribe between they've quite clearly got a market going on and they're quite clearly well connected, and yet they're very insular on the island. Also, I am really, really grateful that the dog didn't die.
Yeah. Sea turtles.
I was so worried about the puppa. But yeah, that was the point I was coming to. Sea turtles. We've spent the last 30 minutes or so talking about myth and legend and the growth of myth and legend.
Yeah.
All they have to, by the end of the second film, start of the third film, all they have to say is sea turtles, and that has become shorthand for a daring escape that no one knows how it was done.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of its own mythos, and it builds that within the films and shows you how it would happen in real life. You can imagine, I'm very surprised sea turtles didn't become internet slang for something. And if it did, I don't want to know, and don't send me the Urban Dictionary link.
Now you say
it will be something I don't want to think about.
The problem, Noodle, you said that with me and Jeff in the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you will Google
now,
it.
I've just got to.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a bit of a different meaning here. It's not too rude. It's not too rude, actually. Just something inexplicable happens, or you don't want to explain something, you can use sea turtles as a stand-in.
Yeah,
which
so
I guess
that's
is very, very much,
isn't it?
Yeah, which is kind of what it is in this. Because that's kind of what happens when it's first mentioned. It's kind of one of those things. The seat. Actually, no, that was the human hair thing with Jack Sparrow.
It was the human hair. No, it was human hair strapped and sea turtles strapped to his feet. That became human hair, became sea turtles. Sea turtles became the shorthand.
Yeah, because when the dog shows up,
it's Captain Teague who says it.
Yeah.
Which is very clever because that's a commentary on how different pirates became conflated throughout history. So, different pirates with similar names would get different stories attached to them. And seeing as we talked about Robert Johnson, basically it's what happened with Robert Johnson and Tommy Johnson.
Yeah.
And that myth. The whole Crossroads deal thing. A lot
of the myths around pirates are fun.
Yeah, the myths are hilarious, but that's what this does. This shows you how those myths within the films take on a life of their own, where you go from, but how did he get away? It was sea turtles, to just sea turtles becoming part and parcel of everyday language.
Well, I know this isn't. Now I know this. I mean, for one sort of famous pirate myth, which now I know I'm going a little off track here because this is only mentioned in the fourth film. but it's the myth about Blackbeard when he was killed and he was decapitated and thrown over. The body was thrown overboard. But the myth is he swam around the ship 3 times before the body sank, and they do sort of mention that a little bit in the 4th film or something. But that's a little off. Because I know we're not talking the 4th film, but.
Yeah.
If someone did that in real life, wouldn't that make them scientifically a vegetable?
Possibly.
Like, that's why chicken is technically a vegetable, because it's not technically sentient, because the body moves after the head's been removed. Like, actively moves, not just twitches and shit like humans do when you guillotine them.
Yeah.
Possibly? I'm not sure on that one.
I feel anyhow someone pops up with frigging... Anyhow someone shows me a chicken and proclaims it a man. We're getting into weird...
I think we can safely say that was a myth anyway, but it was like... it was... But it was a myth in a way that sort of, again, that added to Blackbeard's kind of legends, Can
I just put something out there? If you hear a story of someone doing something miraculous or potentially supernatural 3 times, like a body swimming around a ship 3 times without a head, or something else happening 3 times, or 7 times, or 5 times, sometimes 13 times, all those numbers are superstitious, and I promise you it didn't really happen.
Yeah.
Like, those numbers are an alarm bell for that.
Oh, by the way...
They have specific significance in mythology and biblical numerology.
On a side note, sorry, just watching the Olympics, where Britain's won another swimming medal by a guy by the name of Edward Teach. Sorry.
Please tell me that's true.
No, it's not. It's not. I made that up.
I wish.
I just made that up on the spot.
I haven't been following the Olympics, so I don't know, but I would love for that to be true one day.
That would be entertaining.
That would be very entertaining. He won it in the 300-meter relay. Is there a 300-meter relay in swimming?
There is now.
He went backwards and forwards. He went round and round and round again to win. That's what he did. Maybe he'll be part of the 200-meter dash. 600-meter. Yeah. I'm putting way too much thought into this. So we choose the subject before I go for the tangent.
So are we going to move from the Kraken and commentary on myth to the Kraken and the death of the frontier?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, that feels like it's a good segue. Death of the frontier. So when the creature is killed, the creature is no longer this mythical, unkillable thing that haunts the waters. Once it's killed and it's under control, as it were, it's tamed, it's been captured, it's been killed. And it becomes, or there's references, let's make it a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
Which is a fantastic commentary on capitalism, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's exactly what happens. Which is, again, exactly what happens.
Safari is a prime example.
Yeah. Safari. You could even think of places like places that have got like a natural beauty and wonder that humans have just ruined. And Ring could probably tell, as an American, would probably tell you about this a bit more than I could. But a lot of the reason, like the whole national parks thing was created in the United States is because Niagara Falls got absolutely ruined by the blooming tourists.
Yeah.
That its whole, the falls are still there, but it was just became a big tourist, tourist hub.
No, actually,
pay a shilling to see it and a shilling for a photograph. It's
imagine that humans fucked something up.
Yeah. Oh, imagine that.
Actually, Yellowstone was the first national park.
I thought it was Yosemite.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Yellowstone.
Okay. Used to be quite nothing to get into a massive argument about, but
anyways,
but it's. I think for me, the death of the Kraken is best summed up in Jack's face when he sees it.
Yeah.
Because even though this thing has been actively trying to kill him,
and in fact did kill him.
Did kill him, yeah.
To him, it is an icon of a free ocean, a free sea, an untamed ocean that isn't fully mapped and charted.
Yeah.
And so its death is, I think the death of the Kraken is this film's Turner thesis, this film's frontier thesis. It's the moment where they say, absolutely no, the seas are no longer free. Because it's the death of the old world, it's the death of the superstitious world, and it's the East India Trading Company moving in.
And
it's with charts and maps, and everything's about money and numbers, and every man has his price. And it's not this rose-tinted golden age anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, this is one of the interesting things about the golden age of piracy. I think I mentioned I was reading a book at the moment on the golden age.
Yeah,
a lot of the reason that the golden age of piracy came about, in some ways, was kind of a revolt to what the British East India Company was doing, and what early capitalism was doing. I mean, the way sailors were pressed into service, and then, even if they were on merchant ships or whatever, were quite often screwed over on their pay.
Because there's the great moment with this honest captain who refuses to dock at Tortuga, then docks at Tortuga and makes a pretty penny off the books.
Yeah.
And because he couldn't make a living before that, because the East India Company was in control.
Yeah.
So it's a thing of even honest men can't make an honest living anymore.
And back to the death of the Kraken. It is telling that Lord Beckett of the East India, Honorable East India Trading Company, makes Davy Jones kill the Kraken.
Yeah, it is. Because Davy Jones and the Kraken represent all that was good and honourable and beautiful about the golden age of piracy.
Yeah.
And the East India Company doesn't just kill it, but forces it to kill itself and leave it on a cannibal island. It's going to basically eating itself from the inside out is kind of the commentary that's going on there.
I don't think that's the cannibal island. I think it's just some other random island, because basically, there's an island there with fresh water. We can land there, and because they were landing there to resupply.
I always assumed it was the cannibal island because it looked very similar in the landscape.
There's a bunch of similar islands in the Caribbean.
Yeah, it's the Caribbean.
Yeah.
They're called the Caribbean Islands.
Yeah.
But again, there's a real... I really miss, and I think...
Not, he wanted to screw the... he wanted to free the goddess.
Free the goddess, and also the fact that she fights back and wins. And he gets his for that.
Yeah.
Very quickly, he gets his.
Yeah, and then she takes his place.
Yeah, so that... But like the moments with the... making her remove her trousers... The look up through the floor. Anytime the pirates look at her, the arguments over the dress, the fact that the crew are suddenly scattered to find the woman on board when they hear that she'll likely be naked. I remember finding those jokes funny when I first saw this film.
Yeah.
I remember finding them funny. Yes, they were uncomfortable, but they were funny because they spoke to a truth that I was living in. As an AFAB person who at the time identified as cisgender. Yeah. They spoke to a truth of my experience of, even the best men, even the ones who do what's right regardless of the law, even the decent, honest, salt-of-the-earth men are sleazeballs.
Yeah.
And that was why that was funny at the time. Now looking back on it, I'm just uncomfortable. And it's...
I'm not
aged well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's fair to say it's telling, but it's definitely interesting that the least problematic of those Elizabeth Swann scenes all involve Singapore.
They do, and they also all... I think the least funnily enough, the person who is least problematic towards Elizabeth is Barbossa.
Yeah.
He's the only one who never actively leers at her and never actively tries to lay a hand on her.
Yeah.
Like, even in the first one, there was that threat of you'll be naked with the crew that made him so horrible and awful.
Yeah.
But he never actually himself. He uses the threat of the crew against her, and there's almost the undercurrent there once you get into the second and third films of, because I'm more honourable than them.
Yeah.
I'm a different kind of man to them. And Jack's the same way. Like, even his jokes are on a different level to the leering of the crew. His jokes are more like friendly banter.
Though it is also interesting that, that Barbossa describes Sao Sang as like him, but without his mercy and honorable demeanor. But
yeah, to me that sounds like his...
But, I mean, yeah, Sao Sang does temporarily backstab them because he's like, I'm in a position where I can't win, so I'm going to go for the people who are going to win. But
yeah, that's survival. That's not backstabbing.
He is arguably as well. He is definitely as honorable as Barbossa, but maybe even more so.
Yeah, he's a consummate survivor. He's what Jack would be if Jack was a little bit more ruthless.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's that consummate survivor. And the beautiful line from Captain Teague, this film, again, with its really deep messages of it's not just surviving, it's living with yourself.
Yeah.
And we see that come to a head at the end of the last film, where Jack has to realise that could he have actually lived with himself if he'd have been the one to stab the heart?
Well, I think
you see him really go through that while he hesitates with the knife ready to go as he's looking at Willem. Could he live with himself?
Well, the thing is, I think if Will hadn't been dying, he would have stabbed the heart himself.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Jack's loyalty to his friends is eventually what makes him a good man.
Yeah.
He makes the sacrifice that Elizabeth expected of him in the first half of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he becomes the good man they all thought he was by doing that. But to me, what's really interesting about that particular moment is, especially because we know there's another film following on and what they're looking for, he goes specifically looking for a form of immortality next that doesn't, as far as he knows at the time, involve killing anyone.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's realised that there are some things he's not willing to... He's learned what his price is. His price is his friends and his
and
friends.
Unfortunately...
love song.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it seems like the fourth film is locked away in something even more impenetrable than Davy Jones' locker.
It's all right. We'll send Will Turner to go get the key.
Disney's library,
yeah, the Disney vault.
Yeah. Which is a shame because that was a good film. I don't know why they've.
That's my favourite. I was going to say probably my favourite of the Pirates of the Caribbean series is the fourth film.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I do have to say I want to see more of the priest from the fourth film.
Yeah.
I wanted to see more of him and his story.
I mean, I know we're getting a little off topic with that, but again, we kind of see at the very beginning there what Noodle was just saying, that when it comes to, I mean, the very first thing that happens in the fourth film is Jack is going to save Gibbs from the basically from the hangman's noose.
Yeah. I have to as well. I have to say, when I first saw that fourth film, because the young character, what's his name? The priest.
Oh, I forgot.
The missionary. I genuinely thought he was going to turn out to be bootstrapped for the first half of that film. And that it was going to be a prequel and that it was going to turn out to be bootstrap. Because it is a prequel. It is based before these because Barbossa still works for the Crown. No,
it's not. No, you're wrong upon that. You don't remember? Barbossa actually cut his leg off, which does not happen in the previous films, and it is referenced about the fact that because remember Barbossa takes the pearl off of Jack again.
It's been a while since I've seen the fourth one.
And remember the end of the end of the third film, like the third film ends with Jack having the chart in his little dinghy, and he aligns it to find the Fountain of Youth, and he sails off into the sunset. Once again, this movie, these movies are a Western.
These movies are such a Western, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
The hero riding off into the sunset. And again, with the theme soon, drink up, me heart is your heart. I do love the whole thing with the compass, the final joke in this film. It's just classic. It's so indicative of Jack's character.
It's Philip Swift is the name of the missionary in that film, by the way.
Philip Swift,
Yeah. Where, the compass points to the rum behind him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once he has a drink, he can see where he really was. And that's one of those things of Jack is his priorities are very immediate. He lives in the moment. Yeah. He doesn't have... I think we all like to believe of the heroes in our stories that they have a higher ideal.
Yeah.
And we've spent 3 films hoping Jack Sparrow has a higher ideal. And I think that moment is indicative that he doesn't. Not really. Jack doesn't have something that he wants above all else. All Jack wants is to live, a bottle of rum, and some charts to plot his next course. And Jack's happy. Jack is happy with what he has in that moment. And I think that's a beautiful commentary on his character.
Though he does have a, higher moral ideal. Unfortunately, that scene was cut from the movie.
That scene was cut from the movie, but he does stick to the code as well, which makes sense when you've realised his father's the keeper of it.
Yeah.
But can we talk about that scene that was cut?
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. So, in the scene, it's when Jack is talking to Beckett in his office. And it starts at the moment where Jack stood at the fire and he turns his arm and you see the pea that's been...
when Beckett is talking about betrayal.
Betrayal.
And there's the shot of the pirate brand.
Yeah. And then Beckett says to Jack, you ran off with my cargo. Or words to that effect. You ran off with my cargo. And the response Jack gives is, people aren't cargo, mate.
Yeah.
And from that, we gather that Jack ran off with the pearl. The pearl we realise immediately and suddenly understand that, yes, it's black, but if you look at the pearl, there's a reason it's designed to look like the East India's ships, and it's because it was one.
Yeah.
It's just changed colour. And it was a slave ship.
Yeah.
And Jack took the cargo and set it free, basically. We have to hazard a guess at this because it's done in very vague terms. I would hazard a guess. My idea for that plot is Jack picks up the slaves in Africa. He's heading towards Jamaica. He hits the Caribbean and says, fuck it, and docks at Tortuga and frees them all. That's how I think that went down. Would be how I would imagine it.
I'll say in my head canon, that's what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I hate because I hate to think that he stole that and then sold them.
I don't think he would have done because that's what he meant. Though he said people and cargo, so he recognised them as people and released them.
I think in my head canon, I'll also say this. I think the pearl was prize enough for him as well.
Yeah, the pearl was what he wanted.
The version of this, of this reading I've heard, the fan theory I've heard, is that he went to free the slaves. There was, there was a fire, and the pearl sank, and that's why why Davy Jones specifically wants 100 souls for Jack's one.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're going.
Because the cargo went down with the ship.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
That makes sense. I mean, for me, it's strongly implied in the conversation between Beckett and Jack that Jack was working for the East India Company as a captain of the ship, which meant he sailed to Africa, picked the people up, and was on his way back when he went off course. And that's when the headcanons kick in of, did he do it deliberately? Did he not? Did he dock at Tortuga? Was there a fire? All the rest of it. I would like to think that Jack... But the thing with that is, did Jack then make Davy Jones the offer of save me, my ship, and these 100 people? Why he wants 100 people back? What was Jack's price, basically? Was the pearl his price, or was it the pearl and the people aboard?
Yeah.
And I mean, with it being based in the Caribbean, historically we know it would have been part of the transatlantic slave trade. It's Jamaica he'd have been heading to dock for.
Yeah.
Or possibly Barbados, possibly Haiti, but most likely Jamaica. Jamaica was the main slave trading port.
Haiti was a French colony then anyway, so we would say most likely Jamaica. You could say possibly Nassau, but I mean, if we are looking, if this is the golden age of piracy, the Nassau, of course, was kind of the pirate republic at the time. It was a bit of a lawless place.
If we take Nassau as the fictionalized, as Tortuga as the fictionalized Nassau, then it stands to reason that where Jack was due to dock would be Jamaica. And we know that most of this story starts out in and around Port Royal.
Yeah.
So you say Port Royal or Port Royal,
possibly Kingston. I would say Kingston if he's bringing a slave ship in, just because of the size of the port there.
Well, Port Royal's obviously is on Kingston Harbour anyway. It is on the edge of Kingston Harbour. So
so he's coming into dock in and around Kingston, the main capital of Jamaica, and he's bringing slaves, but something went wrong on the way, and that something was definitely Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
Beckett and Jack quite clearly takes credit for that quote-unquote cargo not being delivered and was branded a pirate for it, which to me says he took tail and run with the ship and with the people on it. And the only place he can run to is Nassau, is Tortuga.
Yeah.
He's got to take them to Tortuga because there's nowhere else for them to go. The rest of the Caribbean islands are pretty much the monopolies there. And we see, there's a lot more characters who quite clearly are of that kind of descent in Tortuga, which would make sense.
Yeah.
Even to the point, even in the first film, the woman it would be, what's the line? It would be less lucky to leave her behind.
Yeah.
What I love that there's the casting for that was brilliant, and that's why I wanted to talk about this scene so much last week. She's quite obviously not quote unquote, I don't like this phrasing, but go with it, pure blood African.
Yeah.
If you look at her. She's Caribbean descent, but she's quite clearly got African features as well. She's mixed race. She's Jamaican. And that's kind of, there's a very, interesting point to be made that Jamaica is one of those cultures, and there's a lot of Caribbean islands that can say the same, where the majority of the population are descended from slaves.
Yeah.
Who either revolted or were eventually, the island was lost in the empire, or they were freed, or whatever happened. There's a reason there's a lot of plantations and things you can visit. You can actually go to Jamaica and visit old plantation houses that are still there, and people own them and run them as museums and stuff. Famously, there's Devon House. Try the rum and raisin ice cream if you go. I hear it's amazing. Just as a side note, totally unrelated, and it makes you wonder if that's what it takes to be branded a pirate, and that's what Jack did. We see then straight away that Jack has always been someone who, above all else, values freedom.
Yeah.
And that comes through in that end scene of he's got his bottle of rum, his little dinghy, and his maps, and he's happy. He's got his freedom. That's all he wants. And that's his higher ideal above all else.
Yeah.
Which makes the immediacy of his character that all he wants is a bottle of rum, or all he wants is a salty wench. So much more. It gives it that depth because he's willing to put his life, his freedom on the line for the ideal of freedom.
But you get the feeling with Jack that even if he does make that big score, like as a pirate,
he'd still keep sailing.
I get that feeling that even if he does make that big score and all the gold he could possibly want, he just doesn't strike me as the sort of guy who's going to settle down and be quiet and content with that.
No, Jack is.
Whereas
I think
you get to a little bit. He hasn't quite got there, but I mean, we're getting way into the fifth film territory now. But you get to the fifth film. Barbosa has kind of got to that point, and you get a feeling he's at least giving some thought about settling down and enjoying his wealth, but can't quite yet, and
you've even to the point you can see Will doing it, if not for having to run the ship because Elizabeth's there.
Will wants to settle down and be with Elizabeth, And
let's be honest, that's what Davy Jones wanted to do but didn't have. But instead was, in a way, almost press-ganged into service on the ship as well, because he really didn't fully appreciate what he was getting himself into.
And then obviously was cursed because he didn't live up to his end of the bargain as well for that.
Yeah. There's a great discussion to be had there about can you be held responsible for not upholding a contract if you didn't fully understand the ins and outs of it.
Yeah.
It's a good old read the small print thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely read the small print, especially on Apple products.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve, the first people not to read the Apple terms and conditions.
Well, there's that. I'll just say we won't go into details, but there's a very, very, very good episode of South Park where they get into the Apple terms and conditions as a running theme throughout the
But so for how much this is a Western, because I mean we get our saloon brawl.
We get multiple saloon brawls, let's be honest.
Yeah. But we get one bit, the obligatory big classic saloon brawl.
Yeah, even to the point of the guy gets his drink knocked out of his hand and just looks around and it starts because he punches the other guy.
Yeah.
If you watch that and then you watch the scene in Shanghai Noon when he walks into the saloon, they're almost shot for shot.
And we also get multiple Mexican standoffs.
We get a 3-way Mexican standoff at one point, don't we?
Yeah. Well,
then
there's got to be at least 3 people involved for it to be a Mexican standoff.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we got ourselves a good old-fashioned Mexican standoff. But the powder's
like Marconi-esque, music plays when we get our showdown at noon music playing when they meet, when the East India Company meets up with Elizabeth Barbosa and Jack.
Yeah. We have the lawman who turned in his badge for love and who did something stupid out of love. Norrington.
But ultimately, it subverts the narrative of the Western because because instead of the frontier is dead, they end up revitalizing the frontier by freeing Calypso.
I agree with what you're saying about revitalizing the frontier. I disagree with you saying that's a subversion of the Western. Because Western movies, specifically Western movies, always carry that bittersweet end note of going off into the wild again, back to the wild.
The cowboy
riding off into
the sunset. Yeah, that famous.
That's not a subversion. That is definitely within. That is a Western thing. I do like even. Did anyone pick up on the Godfather reference in this film?
Which one was this?
It's not personal, Jack. It's just good business.
Oh yeah, it's just good business. And then as the ship blows up around him, it was just good business.
Yeah. And for anyone who's seen The Godfather, it's just good business was Michael's thing, and if you've seen The Godfather Part 3, it becomes very apt.
The ultimate,
the less about that, the better, I think.
The original franchise killer film, yes.
Yeah, the original franchise killer. But yeah, it's just good business. So definitely a commentary there, even to the point of the person who says that originally, it's just good business, is Sonny. Who is it now? Sonny says it to Michael, who repeats it to the cop, who then punches him and breaks his face, and then it becomes Michael's kind of motto throughout his life of, it's strictly business.
Yeah.
And that story's all bound up in the whole Luca Brasi and the band leader thing. But that's another stream for another day. Because I have a lot to say about The Godfather, and we don't have to. We'll be here tomorrow morning if I could start The Godfather.
Let's pencil that in for a future. Well, we've got a load of shit penciled in for future episodes here.
We just need a list somewhere.
I've got a list. I'm working on it now.
Let's just say after we got off stream last week, we did talk about some ideas.
To be fair, we could put The Godfather into the American Mythology Month, easily. Although we did say we were going to do a Gangsters Month at one point.
We said mob. You got to do a mob month. Yeah, I think we got to do.
So, but anyways, pirates.
Yeah, pirates, not gangsters. Although, what's the difference? They both have funny hats, speaking of funny accent, and have their own code of honor. Discuss.
The
difference.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, so
the difference is that not all pirates are mobsters, but all mobsters are pirates.
Well, so here's how I see the the mythologized past archetype developing. So first we have Arthurian court and chivalric knights. Then we have the swashbuckler.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have the gangster. And now we have superheroes.
Cowboy soldier / marine, gangster, then superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because America had that whole Vietnam syndrome thing going for a while, where all your movies were wars and about how honorable your soldiers were. Actually,
I think that it'd go cowboy, gangster, soldier, superhero.
No, the gangsters definitely came after the Vietnam War, because even in The Godfather, it's hinted that Michael comes home from Marine training and is training for the Second World War.
Gangster movies ran pretty much concurrently with the gangster. Actually, if we're talking about production and media, gangster actually comes between swashbuckler and cowboy. If we're talking in American film media,
if we're talking in chronological narrative terms, I'm talking about in literary narrative terms.
Yeah.
In literary narrative terms, I would put them between the soldier and the superhero. But that's because they sort of that's when you're talking about films like Goodfellas and other ones that came along a little bit later. But yeah.
Yeah.
Ring, I just put a comment in there. Do you want to highlight it?
Yeah.
They are.
But why are they called pirates?
They just are.
Yeah. Fun fact, what we recognize as the pirate accent
doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's totally made up.
It was basically an exaggeration of the actor's accent who played Long John Silver in the 1960
Treasure Island.
Treasure Island.
See, I'm more amused than anything.
Wasn't he from the southeast of England?
Yes.
Well, I'll say, yeah, and the funny thing is, I think the only pirate that might have sounded a little bit like something along those lines, because there's a slight West Country thing to a pirate's accent, is Blackbeard, because he was from Bristol. So that's the only one I think who might even sound anything remotely like, would have sounded anything remotely what we think of as a pirate.
Yeah.
See, I find it funny that pirates had like gay marriage and workers' compensation and shit way before most people did.
Well, I talked about this bit last week actually, because but yeah, obviously the Pirate Republic in Nassau, but there was pirate ships and whatever were quite an early experiment in democracy, and were far. I mean, you can see the appeal of this because the society was far more egalitarian than what than really what sort of Britain or Spain or any of the major powers would have been at the time. You could see the appeal
or even now.
Yeah. I mean, because a pirate captain could. I mean, a pirate captain could be voted out of office quite easy, and they quite often were.
A pirate captain didn't technically have full authority unless they were in the middle of combat anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think basically there was two positions. I think that it's a pirate in the court and the captain and the quartermaster were the big positions on a pirate ship.
The quartermaster was basically in charge of logistics and paperwork.
I'm from Yorkshire, so I'm going to mangle this, but me old mucker.
You say that, and my brain just goes, the Wurzels.
The Wurzels, yeah, the Wurzels. That's what the pirate accent's based on.
Thing of me is, I don't really have to try too hard to do a Wurzel accent.
You've got one, haven't you?
I've kind of got
is your
one.
accent, isn't it?
That's my accent, yeah.
Speaking of that, there's a song by the Wurzels, The Morning Glory. It is ostensibly about a ship, but yes, the pun is there.
The Wurzels music is great.
Yeah. Well, bear in mind their most famous song was a send up of there's a singer called Melanie, called this song called Bicycle, and the Wurzels' most famous. Yeah, the Wurzels' most famous song is a parody of that, which is "I Got a Brand New Car by the Harvester." We've got way off topic here.
Yeah,
we've got way off topic.
Don't ever let the Brits
We've
get
gone from Jack Sparrow to the Wurzels.
To be fair, that is not as off topic as it would think to be at first thing.
Yeah, it seems more off topic than it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems off topic, but there is a clear link.
Yeah.
The Wurzels are a band, by the way. Remember Sammy Jenkins.
So,
yes.
Any other topics that we haven't covered enough, or?
Yes. Remember Sammy Jenkins? The Wurzels were small and bitey. No, wait, that was the Wombles.
But anyways, any things we're missing
in terms of themes?
Yeah.
Use of weaponry. I want to talk about.
Okay.
So we get a lot more guns in these two films than we did in the first one.
Yeah.
And we do get a lot more headshots, which I should point out with those kind of weapons, you would have to be at point blank range.
Especially with a pistol at those in that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad enough.
Yeah,
bad enough of a smoothbore musket, but a smoothbore pistol even worse.
Yeah, no, you need to be literally at point blank range, which any further away than Elizabeth was from Norrington, or was it Beckett? I swear those two, they need different wigs.
Yeah.
My face blindness kicks in watching that.
Let's put it this way. This is why back in those days when men used to duel with those sort of pistols, very rarely was anyone actually killed in them because
and they were only 6 steps apart if you think about it, because they start, they turn, they take 3 steps, and then turn. So they're only 7 steps apart, and they're still missing. Now 7 steps is if the average pace is going to be about 3 foot, because they're going to be taking small steps because they want to be closer so they can hit. So
or taking further steps so they don't get hit, whichever way you
even still, you're only looking at maybe a car length apart when they take the shots. Maybe 2 car lengths at a push.
It's a little further than that, but it's the point is firearms in those days were not very accurate. This is why when you had masses of soldiers all stood in lines shooting each other because a volley fire was way more effective.
I'm going to say as well, in my defence and showing off my northern British working classness, when I say a car, in my mind, I am seeing a Mark II Ford Mondeo. Yes, my dad had a Cortina, but I'm seeing a Mark II Ford Mondeo when I say a car, not, a Ford Ka or something smaller like a Focus. I'm seeing a Mondeo.
Mini Cooper, not a Mini Cooper. Let's put it that way.
It's not an original Mini I'm talking about here. Those cars are like easily 12 foot long.
Yeah,
we lost Sam.
Yeah, we lost Sam.
It might be weather. Maybe it's weather interfering, because that might happen to me in a minute. We've got storms where I am.
I've got beautiful sunshine. You know what they say about Yorkshire, God's own country. We always
it is pissing it down here.
So in talking, in speaking with use of weaponry. Okay, so I've got 2 examples I'd like to bring up, but one is on the Cannibal Island.
Okay.
We do have a bit of a reverse Indiana Jones moment.
You call that a knife? This is a knife. Yeah.
No, when
With a
Will's swinging about with his sword and then gets knocked out by the blowgun.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, reverse Indiana Jones moment.
Yeah. And then also in Dead Man's Chest, when Norrington, Sparrow, and Will are having their three-way duel. And then Elizabeth is the only one on the island without a sword.
Yeah. There's also another thing about the weaponry I want to talk about.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're getting at there. I'm just going to proceed a little bit further. Now, I have to be very careful how I word this because I'm falling into the realms of fan fiction, which you will understand in a moment. But Jack stabbing Will stabbing Davy Jones in the back and having his sword bent. And it getting stuck. See, I can't even say that out loud without the phrasing going, brain pinging.
Yeah, no, you said fanfic and my brain went, oh, this is homoerotic.
Yeah, but to be fair, these films are very homoerotic. Again, another thing that they have in common with cowboy movies.
Yeah.
There is an entire academic discourse on the homoeroticism of Western movies. So,
well, I mean,
yes,
cowboys are the gayest shit, besides maybe pirates, so it makes sense.
Well, I mean, Davy
cowboys,
Jones,
Roman soldiers, and pirates. Yeah.
I mean, Davy Jones does seem to take quite a few swords.
Now, see, the thing with cutlasses is that on a pirate ship, not even the swords are straight. I think I temporarily broke Noodle.
Yeah. though I will say.
I'm sorry.
Okay, one last one. Davy Jones takes Norrington's sword before he takes Norrington's sword.
That is not a middle image I have never regretted reading fan fiction until this precise moment. Because that's no, because I know it exists in fan fiction somewhere. I know it will, and I just your people twisted like y'all motherfuckers need Jesus.
What are you talking about? I mean, he gets stabbed in the chest by Norrington's sword, and then he takes Norrington's sword and kills him with it.
That innocent look will only get you so far. You can always tell when Ring is on a femme swing because you would have not got through this conversation without blushing if you were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what I'm hearing is that this conversation needs to be cut up for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For my sake, and also
Yes.
for like whatever the opposite of that is referring to Ring. Because we need to see Ring blush more.
But
Yeah.
anyways,
Just so we can weaponize it later.
Look, I wear a lot of makeup on stream. There are days like today that I'm very grateful for that fact. Because I'm surprised, I'm very grateful for like makeup setting spray and primer right now. Because otherwise it would have all melted off.
but anyways, do you want to go back to your train of thought?
Yeah, so what was my train of thought? Yeah, the weaponry. Okay, so the phallic imagery of the swords is a standard thing. But remember how last week I was talking how Jack didn't use a gun? And there was almost that sense of the way the Doctor's written as a man who doesn't carry a gun.
Yeah.
Or if he does, it's, it's rare. And it's for a very specific purpose. These films, again, feed into that Western narrative of guns everywhere.
Yeah.
But also, one shot, one kill is a very big thing in these films. Shots that are literally impossible are made in this film. Like, this is some frigging American sniper movie shit going on.
Yeah.
It's like, given your tech, you shouldn't be able to make any of these shots ever,
but
let alone all of them.
Yeah, like the plot armor is real. But yeah. But the thing with the guns is they almost become part of the broader thing of being representative of that move towards modernity and the closing of the frontier.
Yeah.
They're moving away from using swords. The pirates use swords. The people who believe in the quote unquote old ways of the ocean and, you know, working and being pirates use swords more, although not exclusively anymore. They are slowly moving towards using gunpowder. As opposed to the East India Company. Do you really see, aside from Norrington, do you remember anyone in the East India Company wielding a sword in these two movies?
I mean,
they have them for decorative purposes, but do they ever actually use them?
Extras in the battle scenes.
Extras in the battle scenes aside, yeah.
Yeah.
But no one who's actually relevant to the plot. And as Scummer put it, yes. Like, to try and make some of those shots in Pirates of the Caribbean, you need John Wick.
Yeah, but... okay, so I have a very good example for what you mean by moving to the gun as moving into modernity. So in the Singapore disarming scene, the one character who is armed primarily with pistols is Elizabeth Swann, and she's fucking loaded with them.
Yeah.
And a bomb.
Yeah. And I don't want to know where she pulled that sawn off from.
Yeah.
Actually, if you think about it, there is logic in him telling her to remove her trousers after he sees her pull that sawn off out.
Yeah.
That's obviously not why that joke was there, which we've discussed.
Yeah.
But there's logic to it.
So it's why that joke is one of the least problematic of that jokes, because it was preceded by the improbable amount of weaponry trope joke.
Yeah, improbable weaponry. And I do actually think that is the name of the trope, isn't it?
I wouldn't know off the top of my head.
I think extended disarming.
Yeah.
Is the trope name. And the character who does that is the walking armor. See Captain Jack Harkness on Station 5 when he's been made over by the Trini and Susanna bots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like, a gun? However did you get that in here? You don't want to know.
You don't want to know. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
But yeah, that was the point I was going to make.
It's also very telling that the best shot in these films and the only person who relies almost exclusively on pistols is a woman.
Yeah.
As opposed to the men who like their big, shiny, long things that they poke each other with. Okay, that one was deliberate.
No, it is also is also somewhat telling.
It'd be more accurate if the men had the pistols and just went off half-cocked all the time.
Yeah, there's a joke there about pulling up your britches, but...
Well, I mean, there was that, there was that scene where they had the Mexicans stand off, but it ended prematurely because they couldn't get off any shots.
Speaking about ending prematurely and not being able to get it up, let's talk about telescopes.
I gotta admit, I loved that thing with Jack and Barbossa with the telescopes. And the fact that Jack has to build like a couple of extensions to his telescope to make it bigger than Barbossa's.
Yeah,
is
and
so
it's still
fun.
at the end.
Because the thing is, you do get the feeling especially for a good part of that third film. I mean, bear in mind the history between Jack and Barbossa, and the fact that Commander the Pearl or whatever. Yeah, there is a definite dick measuring contest going on there between Jack and Barbossa.
Yeah, it's not even subtle. It's not subtle at all.
No.
It's a complete dick measuring contest.
See, my brain's automatic response to that is just compensating for something.
Yeah.
Yes. Although I don't need to have those questions about Jack Sparrow and Hector Barbossa in my brain.
So I went back to my thing. It is also telling that the second best shot is Jack Sparrow.
There's also a beautiful line from Elizabeth, that blink and you miss it line, where she says, Will taught me how to handle a sword.
Yeah.
Which definitely foreshadows the marriage.
Yeah, and then of course, it's intermixed with Jack telling her to persuade him.
Yeah. The innuendo there is just it's pretty damn obvious, you know.
Yeah, and the thing is with that, in the first film, Will says to Jack, "In a fair fight, I would have beaten you." Yeah.
Yeah.
In the second film, Elizabeth is the one who makes it not a fair fight and wins the sword fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having learned from Will. And learned from her own experience.
And Will having
she's had more than her fair share of experience with pirates.
And Will probably having learned a bit as well from you can't expect a fair fight, especially with pirates.
Do like as well the callbacks, half barrel hinges, leverage.
But I mean, the callbacks that throughout these are great. I mean, because it almost became a bit of a catchphrase. You will always remember this as the day where you almost caught Captain Jack, and then it would come to the point where every time he'd try and deliver that line, something would happen to him.
Interrupted.
I mean, he gets his and he just does it in one of the films, and then there's a big wave that comes over, and just
see. I feel like that sort of gag is the best.
Yeah, there's that one, and then there's the gag during the sword fight where with the Kraken and what have you, when it's Will says to Elizabeth, will you marry me? And she looks at him, the first word out of her mouth, Barbossa, and you just get this shot of Will's face.
Yeah.
Like, wait, was he even in this race? And then she's like, marry us. So she recognizes that Barbossa is the captain of the ship at that point, which is interesting.
Because was it not Jack that actually said something that as a captain of a ship I could marry you? You know, was it?
Yeah, it was Jack who told her that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually true, by the way. Captains of a ship do have marriage licenses while the ship is at sea.
Yeah,
but it's got to be in international waters for the marriage to be legal.
Yeah.
Because they don't have... They have the right to perform marriages at sea. But if you're in a nation's waters, you're not technically at sea.
How that necessarily, the legality of that necessarily applies to pirates, I'm not quite sure. But, you know... I think that's something he's not. I haven't seen him in the chat today. That's something probably Tusk is better as a lawyer would be best qualified to answer, but he's not here at the moment. So
there's a. Is she a boat? Is she a ship? She's a pleasure craft. I'm gonna hedge my bets and say she's a pleasure craft. that sails out of Bridlington Harbour on a regular basis, known as the Yorkshire Belle. Beautiful little pleasure craft, goes up to Flamborough Head and back. You can see the puffins and things, and the dolphins
and otters,
and the sea lions, and the otters in the ocean ring. Really?
Yeah. There was a sea otter.
Sea otter. Yeah, there was sea lions as well, and there were dolphins we saw. So that was good. There is a sign. The Yorkshire Belle, you go in, and if you go below decks, there's a bar. Typical, it's pleasure craft. And one of the signs on the brass plates behind the bar reads, "Marriages performed by the captain are only valid for the duration of the voyage." Because that is not a craft that you take out into open waters, especially in the North Sea. Because it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, she actually, I think she sailed in the Second World War as a rescue craft, but she's not big. She's not nothing big. You know, she's made out of wood. A beautiful go, by the way. If you get a chance to whether take a ride, it's like 1 hour up to Flamborough or 2 hours up to Flamborough Head, or the other way around. Do it. You know, the crew are great. They're really nice, and they do let women aboard, and they won't like demand your dress or anything. Do it if you ever get a chance. But that, to me, that's a really good joke, because there's a lot of signs in that boat. The crew are, obviously, it's a modern crew, but they take the mickey with a lot of the superstitions.
Yeah.
They do have a resident musician on board.
I mean, there's always lots of jokes around it. Now, I mean, for example, people know I live on the south coast. I live very near to Portsmouth, and there was where there are a number of historical ships are based. The HMS Warrior, the HMS Victory, and what's left of the Mary Rose, which my stepfather actually volunteers in that museum, by the way, the Mary Rose one. But there's a plaque on the floor on HMS Victory, and it says Nelson fell here. So basically saying, yeah, this is where Nelson was when he was shot. But it's a plaque on the floor. It's a little bit raised off the ground. It says Nelson fell here, and the tour guide always makes the joke. It's not surprising. It's not surprising. I've tripped over that plaque twice today already.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, you see that one coming.
Yeah, it's like been a running joke. If you've been on HMS Victory any more than once, you will see that joke coming.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah. Speaking of, anyway, something I want to talk about, the buried treasure. Very traditional buried treasure, follow the map story with
X
David
marks
Jones,
the spot, yeah.
X marks the spot, all that. But did you notice that box wasn't exactly buried very deep?
No.
Yeah.
Because there's a story about that. Pirates only bury their treasure 18 inches under the ground. Do you know why?
Why?
Because booty is only shin deep.
Oh dear.
Sorry, I know it was bad, but I had to do it. It was required.
Damn it! Yeah. Oh dear. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, we see the characters in the background, the comedic relief characters who run off with the box while they're fighting over it.
Yeah.
Do you know? Okay. Because people have this image of pirates as being a bit like gambler types as well. But do you know pirates that they really couldn't play cards well at all because the captain was always standing on the deck.
Now, see, I think the thing with these pirate jokes is that most of them are stolen.
Well, I do have a legally obtained pirate joke, but it's only it's only really for a privateer.
I started this so I don't have the right to
You
complain.
got to.
But
You started this shit.
I started it. But yeah,
Actually,
also,
Noodle, you don't
Go
have an
on.
eye patch. You should have seen this coming.
my glasses are off. That's my excuse. I'm sticking to it. I will say though, I have figured it out. We always see the same characters in these films, and that's because 3.14% of sailors are pirates.
Now,
yeah, we've descended now, haven't we?
Here's the thing: is that if they ever went and got like chicken-filled pastries and stuff, if they looked at the costs, that would have been the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mm.
Yeah. So, are we going to change the subject, or are we all too hooked on this train of thought?
Well, you know, I mean, well, there's a big myth about pirates that they were into singing sea shanties. Actually, their favourite kind of music was drum and bass. I think that's killed it. Now we've
Yeah.
That's
killed it.
I mean, I've got a longer one that I will definitely murder it if you would like.
Yeah.
You know, there's a story long ago, you know, in the golden age of travel, when a captain and his crew were in danger of being boarded by a pirate ship. And so as the crew became frantic, the captain bellowed to his first mate, "Bring me my red shirt."
I know what's coming, John.
The first mate retrieved it, and when the captain put it on, he led the crew to battle and won. And the pirates were repelled. And so later that day, when the lookout spotted a second set of pirate vessels, with 2 ships this time, they cowered in fear again, and the captain once again called for his red shirt, and the pirates were repelled. Weary from these battles, the men would sit on deck at night and recounting the day's events, with a rum, probably. They asked him, "So why do you call for your red shirt before battle?" And giving a look that only a captain can give, he said, "If I am wounded in battle, the red shirt does not show the wound, and thus you men will continue to fight on unafraid." They sat in silence, marvelling at the courage of such a man. And as dawn came the next morning, the lookout screamed that there were pirate ships, 10 of them, all with boarding parties on the way. The men were silent and looked to the captain for his usual command. Calm as ever, he bellowed, "Bring me my brown pants."
I knew what was coming. I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
Now,
But that
see,
one will kill it.
Now, see, on the topic of music that pirates like, I hear particularly overzealous ones, sometimes like Pachelbel.
Mm.
Yeah,
That
we've
always
killed
bad.
it.
Yeah.
We have well
Yeah,
killed
if that last one didn't kill it, Jeff, this one did.
Yeah,
that one did.
it's dead in. It's you know what it is? It's dead in the
Dead
water.
in the water. Yeah.
But I mean, they're all philosophers.
Yeah.
All pirates are philosophers because they think, therefore they are. But yeah, I think we've killed it.
Yeah.
That's dead.
Yeah.
Unless anyone's got anything further to add.
I'll say pirates were very good in a fist fight actually because they had a hell of a right hook.
I only feel the need to say before we end this that I've got a jar of dirt.
I've got a jar of dirt.
I got a jar of dirt.
And guess what's inside it? What's the thump thump? Thump thump. What's the thump thump? Thump thump. Wait, nobody move. Nobody move. I dropped my brain.
Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure you've seen Sam. You've seen the D&D meme about it, where it's like where Teodama is labeled as the DM, and Captain Jack is labeled as the players.
Yes.
It's like, wait, will this help? Well, if you don't want it, give it back.
Give it back.
No.
No.
Then
Then
it
it
helps. Yes. That's a great, again, a great commentary on superstition and on lucky charms, etc.
Yeah.
See,
And tokens.
I actually ended up saying that pretty much line for line the other day with someone because I offered to help them with a sigil, and they were just like, but will that even help? Because they're an atheist. And I was like, if you don't want it, I don't have to.
Okay, can we establish that you live in a video game, Sam? Your life is weird.
My life is very weird.
Also, I'm not sure if this is the place for this rant, or if a future one on a different movie, which we will be getting to in December, is the place for it. But DreamWorks screwed over Hans Zimmer.
DreamWorks always screw over Hans Zimmer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is true.
Like, I just, yeah.
Yeah, I have a rant about the Road to El Dorado soundtrack.
Also, I will point out that the early 2000s, there are very few films that made it big at the box office that don't have Hans Zimmer in the credits.
No, it's like John
Gladiator,
Williams.
Pirates.
Yeah. Dark Knight.
Yeah, like all the films that are famous for their soundtrack are Hans Zimmer soundtracks.
It's a bit like what John Williams was in the 70s and 80s, you know.
Like the only exception would be The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't really say. This just me. I can't really say that soundtrack's that memorable to me, but
one or two maybe, but not in the way Hans Zimmer's known for.
Yeah.
Like you've got he did Ella Enchanted. He did The Prestige. Iron Man. He did Monsters vs. Aliens.
He even recut the William Tell overture for the Lone Ranger.
Yeah,
his own version of that.
But like you know, everybody knows he's a pirate. However, especially in regards to the third movie, Singapore is a real gem, musically speaking.
Yeah.
I'm referring to the track titled Singapore.
Mm-hmm. He did Inception, he did Interstellar. Sorry, I'm just reading the list and holy shit.
He's done loads, yeah.
Road to El Dorado, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah. So yeah, here's the thing. I'll get into it a little bit then. So here's the thing. The Pirates of the Caribbean soundtracks are all score soundtracks, right? The Road to El Dorado soundtrack is just Elton John singing about the plot of the movie with a couple of like 3-minute montages of leitmotifs.
To be fair, they did the same to Zimmer with Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, but it was Bryan Adams singing over it.
Yeah, but I mean, we at least in the Spirit soundtrack we got a little more of Zimmer stuff.
Yeah, but to be fair, the Spirit soundtrack to me, it's one of Bryan Adams's. Not to say that Bryan Adams has done like massive amounts of outstanding work, but it's up there, you know.
But so yeah,
Bryan Adams is known for three things in my mind. Robin Hood, Spirit, and the Greatest Hits album, which are basically Robin Hood and Spirit.
Well, but you don't remember the.
Oh well, Summer of '69. Yeah,
I was about to say my brain immediately goes Summer of '69.
I was going to say
Summer of '69.
You don't remember the collaboration he did with Rod Stewart and Sting then for the Three Musketeers?
Probably before my time.
Yeah. Well, this came out after Robin Hood, just so you know. But
but Robin Hood's shown on TV every other Sunday.
Yeah, but the Three Musketeers, there's the Three Musketeers film with I think it's Chris O'Donnell was D'Artagnan, and it's Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen, and Oliver Platt as the Musketeers.
Oh, that's the one where Charlie Sheen lost control of the horse.
Yeah.
When they were filming, there's a great story about that. With Keith Sutherland and Charlie Sheen.
Like, as far as I know, the only soundtrack, DreamWorks soundtrack that didn't have this problem where it's like, hey, you're the celebrity singer-songwriter, just release an album and we'll give you the name. It was The Prince of Egypt.
Zimmer did The Prince of Egypt.
No, Zimmer didn't do The Prince of Egypt, but I'm saying that's the only. So it's like the only.
Actually, according to this, he got the nomination for The Prince of Egypt of Best Original Score.
Okay, so yeah, the one movie soundtrack album that DreamWorks didn't screw Zimmer over was the Cast musical.
No.
Well, I don't think Hans Zimmer's struggling though.
I really don't. I mean, he's probably living off the royalties from Circle of Life alone.
No, but the thing is, I'm not pissed for Hans Zimmer. I'm pissed as a consumer because when I want to listen to the soundtrack from The Road to El Dorado, I don't want to listen to Elton fucking John singing about the plot to The Road to El Dorado.
This is valid.
To be fair, I could just. You could have just left that as I don't want to listen to Elton John.
Elton John. Yeah. There's very few.
I'll give him certain props on certain things that I have enjoyed. Like I actually enjoyed his cover of Pinball Wizards, for example. But
and you still can't listen to Candle in the Wind without shedding a tear. But Elton John, largely, I found the older I've gotten, the less I rate him.
Yeah.
Elton John came out at a time when it was the only time he would have made it big.
One thing I will give him in recent years is that he helped discover the two cellos, who I think are fucking amazing.
Mm. Yeah.
Oh yeah, their cover of "Oh Well."
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just looking at Hans Zimmer's discography as a score producer, and he's just a rash over the last 20 years of film.
Yeah, he's what John Williams was like 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Way
He's doing the score for Top Gun Maverick.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm going to get to watch Homoerotic, the sequel, and get a good score. Because I've not seen it yet. Because, yes, Top Gun was a homoerotic fantasy, don't at me.
So, I think we've well and truly gone off the edge of the world, so final thoughts.
Could you say we're on Stranger Tides?
Unfortunately, that's in the Disney vault.
We should probably a good time. We should show
Disney are the biggest pirates of all.
Yes.
I'll drink
and not
to that.
the fun pirates.
Not the fun pirates either.
Yeah.
Oh, is Disney still in your room as well?
The run's gone. There's a little bit left in the bottom.
But why is there no rum?
Why is the rum always gone?
Why is everything gone but the rum? The rum's gone too.
We've only got 6 barrels of gunpowder. Then load up the rum as well. The rum? The rum. Aye, the rum.
I guess, okay, I'll just say some final thoughts on this, because it's been going a little while. I'm sure Noodle will agree with me. Time flies when you're having rum.
Yeah. Time flies when you're having rum. Drink up me heart is your whore.
Yep. So, basically, in conclusion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and At World's End are fun westerns with a, swashbuckler coat of paint that are surprisingly deeper than they appear.
Mm.
Pirates of the Caribbean is what happens when you put a western on the ocean instead of in the desert and teach the cowboys how to swim.
Yeah.
Beautiful movies, really great. I'm not going to say they're not historically accurate, but there's a level of... Basically, I understand why 15 years ago when these films were first coming out, 10, 15 years ago, I understand why as the generation that watched those films, why my generation is now looking at the law and the way things are in the world and saying, fuck that, let's go out and protest. You can't show us films like these in our formative years and not expect us to stand up and say, no, enough's enough. And these movies, that message really comes through in these movies of what matters most is people and friendships and loyalty and honor, rather than the letter of the law. It's the spirit of the law that matters. And
freedom and living by the sweat of our brow and the strength of our backs.
Yeah, and it's really sad that we're the generation who, for the first time since industrialization, can't really say we got that opportunity. But that's why we're fighting back. So you made these films for us. Don't bitch when we go out in the streets and start living the ideals you force-fed us as children through TV and cinema. That's my overarching thing, I think.
Hell, especially like my generation as well, is a little bit done with people shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. You show kids something like that, you've got to expect that they're going to absorb it and absorb the lessons.
And Sam, anything else?
No, not beyond that. I really fucking need to do a Pirates marathon at some point.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen these in years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
I did several weeks ago, and then things got postponed, so I'm still...
Yeah. Well, let's move to Shilling. Sam?
So for the last few weeks, we've ended up not releasing episodes of Pub Religion because bullshit's happened, and I've just got my laptop fixed. But so on Wednesday, we should have the next episode of that actually fucking coming out.
And Scummer?
Okay, I'm not necessarily anything coming up, but if people want to go back and watch the little 25-minute stream I did earlier today, where I covered a news story about which is just fantastic, about how a pair of YouTubers epically pranked Piers Corbyn, anti-vaxxer, and conned him into taking a brown envelope. Which he thought had 10 grand in cash in, and it turns out they'd swapped it for Monopoly money. It's epic. The story is absolutely epic. And I'll just say, I think I'll team up with a little bit with Ring here. Please come and sub to my channel and get me to 400 subs. So if you're not subbed to Rings already, get Ring to 200, because we're going to beat Godless Sewing.
Yeah. And if you do get me to 200 before Godless Sewing gets to 100, I will be doing my embarrassing story stream while drinking.
Oh boy.
I will make sure there is rum.
Noodle,
we will send you rum.
Anything to chill.
Nothing much to chill at the moment. Just keeping on. I'm sure as things crop up, you'll see me on different streams and things. I'm usually like Media Musings is my one big weekly thing now. But we will see. You never know what's going to come up. I'm on Twitter. I'm on AO3. Heed warnings, heed tags, etc., etc. And yeah, I think that's everything.
And presuming I stay in a certain stable state, and presuming shenanigans don't pop up, this Saturday we should be getting back to secular D&D, because it looks like we're in a case where the party can actually make it. And assuming I don't have any other, the problem doesn't pop up again, we should have Media Musings next Sunday where we will be talking about True Grit.
Although we're talking the original or the remake here?
The original. John Wayne.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll go to taglines.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, use your noodle.
You will always remember this stream as the stream where you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow.
Have a day, and remember, communication is key.
And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.